Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, August 31st, 2018. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by Jonah Booker for his usual Friday visit. JBook, just when I thought I was going to dedicate an entire show to talk nothing about anything off the field, we're just going to talk all about Ohio State football at the season opener tomorrow. There was more off-the-field developments yesterday with, I guess, now former Board of Trustees member at Ohio State, Jeff Wadsworth, quitting the board over the Urban Meyer situation. He didn't think the penalty was stiff enough, and he went to the New York Times crying about it, and this just does not sit well with me. It's one thing if you quit, take your ball and go home. I think that's pretty weak. But then to take your ball and go home and then cry about it, this guy, he was the one that was responsible, JBook, for bringing Drake to Ohio State as university president. Just your thoughts on this Jeff Wadsworth development.
I don't understand his motive here. If you don't agree with the punishment and you feel like the rest of the board members overruled him and he doesn't agree that a 3-game suspension is long enough, then just resign in peace and go on about your way. Like, why do you have to go and speak to the media about this? This is the issue with Ohio State. Too many people are just popping off at the mouth at all angles here. You're a board member. These people here are supposed to be having the best interest of the university at hand. How does this help the university by going to the New York Times and voicing your displeasure? I'm sure there are other people on the board who felt like there should have been a harder suspension. I know a lot of people mentioned Abigail Wexner and maybe one other there, but you don't see these other people just stepping out of line here. I just don't understand what his motivation here is, and he's out here trying to make it seem like he's willing to die on this mountain of self-righteousness. But hey, if he has a personal beef with it, then quit and move on with your life. The media doesn't have to know every twist and turn what went on in that meeting.
Columbus Monthly did a pretty scathing blurb on him. It was just a blurb. It wasn't a story just about him. It was about leaders in Columbus. This was 2 years ago. I'm going to read a couple key passages from their blurb on Jeff Wadsworth. And people can go to Columbus Monthly, just do a Google search for it. It will come right up. That's how I found it, thanks to somebody on the front row message board for bringing it up initially. All right, this is from the Columbus Monthly piece on Wadsworth. Quote, he failed to use his position as Ohio State's Board of Trustees chairman to wield any kind of real community engagement. That's a problem. You're the head of the board, and you fail to wield any kind of real community engagement. That's not good. And to be clear, he was no longer the board chairman, but he was back in 2016, and he was in 2014 when Drake was hired. Again, the story's from 2016. Here's the other quote that's interesting. Quote, another longtime community leader describes Wadsworth as the quietest OSU board leader he has ever seen. So this guy sounds like he was a horrible leader, and now he's going and crying to the media. And I'm a media guy saying this. I should love it, right, that he's going and giving these great quotes to the media. Like, no, I don't like it. I think this guy, it just comes across as a weakling, and he, a very weak man, and just a crybaby.
The school's better off with him not even being on the board. First of all, you mentioned him being one of the focal points of bringing Drake in the fold. So that right there, to a lot of Ohio State fans, is enough grounds for him to be well on his way. And the fact that he wants to sell the school out by going out and speaking to the media, then the program, the school, other trustees, they're just flatly better off with him gone.
All right, now let's talk some football. Buckeyes and Beavers tomorrow, high noon at the Horseshoe. It feels good to say that. I think if those who were hoping that once football arrived that all the off-the-field stuff would be completely behind us, I think they were kidding themselves. That's just going to keep being out there. The question is to what degree, but let's talk football for the rest of the show. Just what are you most excited to see? Is it Dwayne Haskins tomorrow, just him getting his first start? And if you talk about that a little bit, if that's one of them, and maybe something else you're really, really, really jacked up to see tomorrow, JBook.
The thing that I'm really excited to see is how Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson call a game without Urban Meyer being there. I think this is a beautiful opportunity for these guys to really put their stamp on the offense. A lot of people believe that Urban is very conservative at times when it comes to his play calling. Can these guys really put on display what this team can really do? I feel like for numerous years, there's been a significant amount of offensive talent that was never really fully used. And if these guys can really get this offense clicking as far as getting the touches to the playmakers and having a creative and dynamic play calling scheme, I think it could show Urban Meyer to allow these guys a little bit more reign going forward in the season. When it comes to player personnel, I just want to see how this offensive line does. It's a massive offensive line. You got 3, 6, 7 guys on there. How's Michael Jordan going to look at center? We all know what he can do at guard. And just the newer bodies on there, are they meshed? I know we had in the boarding house, one of the major emphasis from this camp was just getting nastier in the trenches, with Kevin Wilson being more heavily involved with the offensive line. Can this offensive line just dominate up front? If they can, I think he could be looking at 2 1,000-yard backs with Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins. So just overall, how is Day and Wilson calling the game, and will the offensive line just come out nasty and just move some people around in the trenches?
Yeah, I'm worried about that, though. I just am concerned. I don't remember being this concerned about an offensive line during the Urban Meyer era. And, I hate to say it. I'd feel better about it if Ed Warner never wanted to be an offensive coordinator and just would have stayed in his lane and been happy being a offensive line coach. Now he's, of course, up north. I just don't. I like Greg Studraw. I like interviewing him. I just don't know if he's a good offensive line coach. Now, it is good that Kevin Wilson's there. I've pointed this out a lot, so I don't want to contradict myself here, that Kevin Wilson's been working a lot with the offensive line. So maybe that will be a huge factor. But now without Urban Meyer, Ryan Day has to do a lot of the head coach stuff along with Greg Schianis. Now, Kevin Wilson has to do more of the offensive coordinator stuff. So how much can he really help with the offensive line? I still think he can't help. But JBook, my point is, man, I am concerned, big time about this. I thought linebacker was going to be my biggest concern. I said that all off season. Now, without question, it's offensive line. I'm just concerned about this group.
Yeah, and the guy, if I was to be worried about the offensive line, one particular player, I'm a little nervous about Thayer Munford being able to handle the speed pass rush. I know there were some few camp clippings, and Chase Young just absolutely had this guy on skates. And from all indications, the offensive left tackle spot is truly not completely settled. So Thayer's going to get the first crack at the start, but they're really not 100% sold that he's going to be the guy throughout the season. So that's something to keep an eye on. I think these guys have the potential to be good. As you mentioned, Stud, being able to coach him up, that's the major question mark there. To me, with this offensive line being this massive, I would be highly disappointed if these guys don't bring a level of nastiness to the table with that size. I mean, you got an offensive line that's NFL caliber size. If these guys can't move bodies around, every one of them are high 4-star, highly ranked recruiting guys. If they're not performing to a high level, to me, that falls back on coaching.
And then I was listening to the coaches show yesterday. It was the Ryan Day and Greg Schiano coaches show, taking the spot of Urban Meyer, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, really, those guys are really, even though they're not saying this, it's really like 1A and 1A. They're both like really 50-50 head coach right now is Ryan Day and Greg Schiano. But it was encouraging. A lot of things were encouraging about that show yesterday. But Greg Schiano, this is no surprise, but it was good to hear him say this about Nick Bosa. They're always going to run a rotation up front, but they are committed to keeping Bosa out there as much as possible, especially in big games. I'm sure he's not referring to like the fourth quarter against Rutgers if they're up by 50, but that's great news. I mean, it's understandable why they had needed to use such a deep rotation last year, JBook, but you got a guy that could be the best player in college football, is going to be a top 3 overall NFL draft pick. I mean, get him out there as much as possible.
Yeah, he's going to have a tremendous opportunity to rack up major sacks here as far as numbers. And I think early on he's going to see some double teams there because teams aren't going to be truly aware of what Chase Young can do. And if he can beat those double teams, then it's going to create a tremendous problem for offensive lines because if you're doubling Bosa, that means Chase Young is getting single coverage as well as Draymond Jones. As far as the rotation there, you want to have your best player on the field. Obviously, you want to give him a blow. That's where Cooper's going to be able to come in and hopefully spell him sometimes. But as far as blowouts, things of that nature, get him out of there. I mean, I know they want to have him playing as many snaps as possible. But once November comes around and we start getting into the heart of the Big Ten schedule, you don't want this guy completely wore down and gassed with heavy legs. So I know Larry Johnson had always liked to have a nice, steady rotation. So it's going to be a balance between letting the best player in college football on the defensive line get his snaps in, but also balancing how many reps he does get so that he's not gassed in the fourth quarter.
And then just overall this season, which, I mean, you don't have to give me, too detailed of a prediction, but do you think this is going to be a playoff team, Big Ten champion, just anything you want to throw out there as far as just an overall prediction for this squad?
I like where this team is at right now. No one's picking them to win. If you look at all the ESPN commentaries and the Fox Sports, everybody is pretty much completely writing this team off, and that's the position you want to be in. When you have an Ohio State football team with this much talent playing with a major chip on their shoulder, they're going to be extremely dangerous. And with the talent that's at hand, as long as these guys can stay fundamentally sound and the offensive line can come together as well as the linebackers, this team can win the Big Ten. I think they will win the Big Ten, and I think they will have a big push into the playoffs. If that's the case, you're going to be looking at an Ohio State team pound for pound with as much talent as anyone in the country, including Alabama. It's just going to be how they execute. Can they handle the adversity on the field? And if this team can just stay healthy. If they can stay healthy, I think this team will be a national championship caliber football program.
Well, Jonah Booker is national championship caliber for sure. Thank you very much. JBook, you can catch him on Twitter at JBook37. You can catch him all over Bucknuts. Of course, his column is Outside Columbus. Thank you, JBook, and thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Enjoy the game tomorrow, Bucknutters. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.